Ambassador Jinho felt his boots touch the strange, glowing ground of planet Nara. The surface sparkled like diamonds under the alien sun, making everything look magical. He had traveled across the galaxy for this moment, carrying hopes for peace. Between Earth and the powerful Naran Empire. High above in her crystal tower, Princess Minji watched the human ship land. She pressed her pale blue hand against the cool window and sighed. Another alien diplomat had come to her world, probably wanting to steal their advanced technology or make unfair deals. She had seen it all before. The galaxy was full of species who thought they were better than others. Just another greedy outsider, she whispered to herself, her silver hair catching the light. They all want the same thing. Down at the spaceport, Jinho stepped out of his small Earth ship. He looked around with wonder at the beautiful crystal buildings that grew from the ground like frozen trees. Naran people moved gracefully around him, their skin shimmering with natural light. He had studied their culture for months, but seeing it in person took his breath away. Other alien ambassadors were already there, standing in groups and talking loudly. They wore expensive clothes and looked important. Some had multiple arms, others had scales or fur, but they all shared the same cold, business-like attitude. They barely looked at the Naran workers who carried their bags. Jinho was different. When a young Naran guide approached him, he smiled warmly and bowed respectfully. "Thank you for welcoming me to your beautiful world," he said in carefully practiced Naran language. The guide's eyes widened in surprise. Most visitors never bothered to learn even basic phrases. Suddenly, the peaceful afternoon exploded into chaos. Dark ships screamed overhead, and red laser bolts began hitting the spaceport. These were space raiders, criminals who attacked peaceful planets to steal and destroy. Alarms blared as people ran in all directions. The other alien ambassadors immediately rushed toward their ships, pushing past anyone in their way. "Protect the VIPs!" their guards shouted. They only cared about saving themselves. But Jinho saw something that made his heart race with fear. A group of young Naran children had been visiting the spaceport on a school trip. Now they were trapped in the open, crying and confused as explosions happened around them. Their teacher was trying to lead them to safety, but there were too many, and the path was blocked by falling debris. Without thinking, Jinho ran toward the children, instead of toward his own ship. Laser bolts hit the ground near his feet, but he kept going. He reached the group of scared children and knelt down to their level. "It's okay," he said gently, though his heart was pounding. "I'm going to help you get somewhere safe." He picked up the smallest child, a little girl who couldn't stop crying, and guided the others toward a strong crystal building. The Naran teacher looked at him with amazement. No alien had ever risked their life for Naran children before. Up in her tower, Princess Minji watched this human running back and forth, helping her people reach safety. Even when a raider ship fired directly at him, he used his body to shield the children. She had never seen anything like it. "Who is this human?" she asked her advisor, unable to look away. The attack ended quickly when Naran defense ships arrived, but the damage was done. As the smoke cleared, Minji could see Jinho, still helping injured people, sharing his water with frightened families. Other ambassadors were already complaining about delays to their schedules. For the first time in years, Princess Minji felt curious about meeting someone new. The grand dining hall of the Naran Palace was like nothing Jinho had ever seen. Crystal. Walls rose high above them, filled with swirling colors that danced like northern lights. Long tables made from single pieces of glowing stone stretched across the room, set with dishes that seemed to float just above the surface. Princess Minji sat at the head table, wearing a flowing dress that sparkled like starlight. She watched as the alien ambassadors took their seats, each one trying to sit as close to her as possible. They wanted to show their importance to everyone in the room. The Zephonian ambassador, a tall creature with 4 arms, snapped his fingers rudely at a passing servant. "Bring me the expensive wine, not the cheap stuff," he demanded without even looking at the servant's face. The Corvan delegation leader, covered in beautiful purple scales, simply pointed at what she wanted. When servants brought her food, she acted like they were invisible robots instead of living beings. But Jinho was different from the moment he entered the hall. When a young Naran guard opened the door for him, Jinho stopped and said, Thank you. So much. What's your name? The guard blinked in surprise. I'm Taiho, sir. Nice to meet you, Taiho. I'm Jinho. Thank you for keeping everyone safe today during that attack. Word spread quickly among the palace staff. The human actually talked to them like real people. As Jinho walked to his table, he greeted every servant he passed. He learned that Sumin had 3 children at home, that elderly Hyunwoo had worked in the palace for 30 years, and that young Jihye was studying to become a crystal engineer in her free time. Princess Minji couldn't believe what she was seeing. She had hosted hundreds of diplomatic dinners, but no foreign leader had ever spoken to her staff with such genuine interest. The other ambassadors were busy arguing about who got the best seats, completely ignoring the people serving them. Your daughter wants to be an engineer? Jinho asked Sumin as she filled his water glass. That's wonderful. Engineering is what built the bridges between our worlds. Sumin's face lit up with pride. She had never been able to talk about her family with any of the important visitors before. The other ambassadors noticed Jinho's behavior and whispered among themselves. Why is he wasting time with servants? The Zephonian muttered. Does he not understand proper protocol? But Princess Minji found herself leaning forward, listening to every word. This human treated her people the way she wished everyone would, with respect and kindness. Then disaster struck in the most ordinary way. Young Jihye, the servant who dreamed of being an engineer, was carefully carrying a pitcher of expensive Naran wine. Her hands were shaking because she was nervous about serving such important guests. As she reached to fill Jinho's glass, she accidentally bumped the table. The wine splashed across Jinho's clean white shirt, staining it deep purple. The entire hall went silent. Every conversation stopped. All eyes turned to see how the human would react. Jihye's face went pale with terror. In the past, foreign ambassadors had screamed at servants for much smaller mistakes. Some had even demanded punishment, but Jinho did something nobody expected. He smiled gently and stood up slowly. Oh, don't worry about it, he said softly to Jihye. Accidents happen to everyone. Then he grabbed his napkin and started helping her clean up the spilled wine from the table. Here, let me help you with this. The princess watched in amazement as this human ambassador got on his knees to pick up pieces of the broken pitcher, completely ignoring his stained clothes. Jihye was so shocked, she started crying, not from fear, but from relief and gratitude. Sir, you don't have to do that, she whispered. Of course I do, Jinho replied with a warm smile. We're all just people trying our best. The entire court stared in stunned silence. Even Princess Minji's advisors were speechless. No one had ever seen anything like this before. For the first time in her life, Princess Minji realized she was looking at someone truly special. The negotiation room was carved from a single massive crystal that glowed softly in the morning light. Princess Minji sat across from the alien ambassadors, her hands folded calmly on the smooth table. She had done this dance many times before. Everyone wanted the same thing: Naran crystal technology that could power their ships and weapons for centuries. The Zephonian ambassador slammed his 4 fists on the table, making the crystal ring like a bell. Princess, you know what we can offer you, he growled. Military protection from your enemies, but if you refuse... His voice trailed off with a dark threat hanging in the air. The Corvan leader was more subtle but equally demanding. Our trade. Roads could make your people very wealthy, she said with a fake smile. Of course, if you choose to work with lesser species instead, those routes might become dangerous for Naran ships. Princess Minji had heard it all before. Threats wrapped in pretty words. Promises that always meant the same thing. Give us your technology or we'll take it by force. She was about to give her usual polite refusal when Jinho cleared his throat. Actually, he said quietly, I'd like to propose something different. The other ambassadors laughed. What could this human from a primitive planet possibly offer? Jinho reached into his simple bag and pulled out a small device. I brought something from Earth that I thought you might enjoy. He pressed a button, and suddenly the crystal room filled with the most beautiful sound Princess Minji had ever heard. It was human music, a gentle piano melody that seemed to flow like water. Then a voice joined in, singing words in a language she didn't understand. But the emotion was universal. The song spoke of love, of hope, of people reaching across the darkness to find each other. Princess Minji felt tears forming in her eyes. In all her years of diplomatic meetings, no one had ever shared anything so purely beautiful with her. The other ambassadors sat in confused silence, not understanding why anyone would waste time with music during business negotiations. "This is called Moonlight Sonata," Jinho explained softly. "A human composer wrote it 300 years ago. He was going deaf, losing the thing he loved most, but he still created something beautiful for others to enjoy." "Why are you showing me this?" Princess Minji asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Because," Jinho said, "Earth doesn't have crystal technology or advanced weapons. We don't have much to offer in terms of power. But we have music, art, stories, and dreams. We have different ways of solving problems. Maybe we could learn from each other instead of just taking from each other." He pulled out more items from his bag. Paintings of Earth's mountains and oceans, books of human poetry translated into Naran, recordings of children singing lullabies. "I spent 2 years learning about Naran culture before coming here," he continued. "Your people's history of turning crystals into living art amazes me. The way you've built cities that grow instead of just standing there is incredible." Princess Minji stared at him. "You studied our history?" "Of course," Jinho smiled. "Did you know that your ancestor, Queen Nari, once wrote that true strength comes not from what we can take, but from what we choose to give? I found that quote in your old books, and it changed how I think about everything." The princess felt something crack inside her chest. No foreign leader had ever quoted her people's ancient wisdom back to her. Most didn't even know Naran had. "Books, let alone beautiful philosophy. I propose joint research projects," Jinho continued. "Human creativity combined with Naran crystal technology. Not to build weapons, but to explore space together, to create art that neither of our species could make alone. We could exchange students, share music and stories, learn from each other's mistakes." The other ambassadors were getting angry. "This is ridiculous," the Zephonian shouted. "Why would you waste time with these primitive humans when we offer you real power?" But Princess Minji wasn't listening to them anymore. She was looking at Jinho with new eyes, seeing someone who didn't want to conquer or control her people. He wanted to be their friend. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why don't you just demand what you want like everyone else? Why do you actually care about our culture?" Jinho looked straight into her eyes. "Because taking something by force means it was never really yours. But when people choose to share with each other, both sides become stronger. That's what humans call friendship." For the first time in her life, Princess Minji understood what that word really meant. The alarm bells rang through the crystal city at dawn, their urgent chiming echoing off the glowing walls. Princess Minji rushed to the emergency council chamber, her silk robes flowing behind her. The news was terrible. A deadly plague had broken out in the working districts where most of Naran people lived. "How bad is it?" she asked her chief medical advisor, Dr. Sunho. "Very bad, Princess. The sickness spreads through the air and we don't know how to stop it. People are falling ill faster than we can treat them. We've already lost 50 people and hundreds more are getting sick every hour." The other alien ambassadors were quick to act when they heard the news. Within minutes, their ships were sealed tight and ready to leave the planet. "We cannot risk our people," the Zephonian ambassador declared. "We will return when this crisis is over." But when Princess Minji looked for Jinho, she found him doing something completely unexpected. He was putting on a medical mask and preparing to enter the quarantine zone. "What are you doing?" she asked, grabbing his arm. "You could die in there." Jinho looked at her with calm, determined eyes. "Your people are suffering. If there's any way I can help, I have to try." "But you're not a doctor," Princess Minji said, confusion clear in her voice. "No, but I have 2 hands and a heart," Jinho replied simply. "Sometimes that's enough." Dr. Sunho overheard their conversation and approached, them with desperate hope in his eyes. "Actually, Princess, the human might be able to help in ways we cannot. This plague affects all known species in our galaxy, but humans have never been exposed to it. He might be immune." Princess Minji watched through the crystal barriers as Jinho entered the quarantine zone. The working districts were usually full of life and laughter, but now they looked like a ghost town. Sick Naran people lay in makeshift hospitals, their usually glowing skin pale and dim. The first thing Jinho did was kneel beside a small child who was crying for her mother. He couldn't understand all the words, but he didn't need to. He held the little girl's hand and hummed a gentle earth lullaby until she fell asleep peacefully. Dr. Sunho was amazed. He's not getting sick. The human really is immune. Over the next few days, Princess Minji spent hours watching Jinho work. He moved from bed to bed, bringing water to thirsty patients, helping doctors carry supplies, and simply sitting with people who were afraid. He didn't speak much Naran, but his actions spoke louder than words. When the medical team discovered that human blood could be used to create medicine for the plague, Jinho didn't hesitate. "Take as much as you need," he told them, rolling up his sleeve. "But sir, this could weaken you," Dr. Sunho warned. "These people saved my life by welcoming me to their world," Jinho said. "Now it's my turn to save theirs." Princess Minji watched him give blood 3 times a day, every day until he was pale and exhausted. But he never complained, never asked for special treatment. When he wasn't giving blood, he was back in the quarantine zone, helping in any way he could. One evening, Princess Minji broke protocol and entered the quarantine zone herself. She found Jinho sitting beside an elderly Naran man who was very sick. "This is Grandfather Minho," Jinho explained softly. "He worked in the crystal mines for 60 years. He's been telling me stories about the old days." The old man smiled weakly at the princess. "This human," he whispered. "He has the heart of a true Naran. He sits with us when we're scared. He shares his food when we're hungry. He gives his blood to save our children." Princess Minji felt tears in her eyes. She had always thought of humans as a primitive species, limited by their simple technology and short lives. But watching Jinho, she realized she had been measuring the wrong things. Technology could be built, weapons could be bought, but the courage to sacrifice for strangers, that was something truly rare. "Why do you do this?" she asked Jinho later that night, as they sat exhausted in the medical station. "Because it's right," he said simply. "When people are suffering, you help them. That's what makes us human." Princess Minji looked at this tired, ordinary man who had saved thousands of her people, and she began to understand that being human wasn't about being primitive at all. It was about being extraordinary in the most important ways. The plague was finally over, and the Crystal City was slowly returning to normal. But Princess Minji found herself unable to sleep. Every night, she would walk through the palace gardens, her mind filled with thoughts she couldn't share with anyone. The moonlight made the crystal flowers glow softly, creating shadows that danced in the gentle breeze. It was during one of these lonely walks that she found Jinho sitting on a stone bench, looking up at the stars. He seemed lost in thought, his face peaceful but sad. "Can't sleep either?" she asked quietly, sitting down beside him. Jinho smiled. "I was thinking about home. Earth's moon looks different from here, but the stars are still the same. It's strange how something so far away can make you feel less alone." "Tell me about Earth," Princess Minji said. She had never asked a foreign ambassador about their homeworld before, but something about Jinho made her genuinely curious. "It's not as beautiful as Nara," Jinho said. "We don't have crystal cities or glowing flowers. Our buildings are made of simple stone and metal. But there's something special about it. Maybe it's because we know how fragile everything is. We have to take care of each other because no one else will." Princess Minji pulled her silk shawl closer around her shoulders. "Sometimes I wish I lived on a world like that," she said softly. "Why?" Jinho asked, turning to look at her. For a moment, Princess Minji hesitated. She had never told anyone about her fears, not even her closest advisors, but something about the quiet garden and Jinho's kind eyes made her want to speak. "Because on Earth you can choose who you marry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jinho was quiet for a long moment. "So you can't choose." "Next month I'm supposed to marry Prince Kangmin of the Titan Alliance," she said, staring at her hands. "I've never met him, but I know his reputation. He's cruel and aggressive. His people have conquered 12 planets in the last 5 years. The marriage is supposed to prevent a war, but I know the truth. Once I marry him, Nara will become part of his empire. That must be terrifying, Jinho said gently. Everyone tells me it's my duty, Princess Minji continued, that a good princess sacrifices her happiness for her people. But at night, I lie awake wondering if there's another way. Is peace only possible through surrender? Jinho was quiet for a while, thinking carefully about his words. On Earth we have a saying, the strongest steel is forged in the hottest. Fire, but it's made strong by being hammered together, not alone. I don't understand, Princess Minji said. We humans aren't the strongest species in the galaxy, Jinho explained. We don't have the best technology or the biggest armies, but we've survived everything, wars, disasters, diseases, because we learned that real strength comes from working together as equals, not from one person controlling everyone else. He picked up a small crystal flower that had fallen from a nearby tree. This flower is beautiful, but if you tried to force it to grow in the wrong soil, it would die. Real alliances are like gardens. They only work when every plant has what it needs to grow. Princess Minji felt something warm spreading through her chest as she listened to his words. So you make it sound so simple. It's not simple, Jinho said with a sad smile. But it's possible. On Earth we have hundreds of different countries with different languages and customs. 500 years ago we were always fighting each other. But we learned that we're stronger when we choose to work together, instead of when one country forces all the others to obey. But how do you convince aggressive people, like Prince Kangmin, to choose cooperation? Princess Minji asked. Sometimes. You can't, Jinho admitted. But sometimes when people see a better way of living, they want to try it for themselves. The plague showed your people that humans can be trusted friends, not just useful tools. Maybe other species will see that too. Princess Minji looked at this human who had saved her people without asking for anything in return. In just a few weeks, he had shown her a completely different way of thinking about strength, leadership, and love. Jinho, she said quietly, what would you do if you were me? He looked into her eyes and she saw something there that made her heart beat faster. I would ask myself what kind of world I want to leave for the children I saw in that hospital. Then I would be brave enough to fight for that world, even if it seemed impossible. As they sat together under the alien stars, Princess Minji realized she was falling in love, not just with Jinho, but with the idea of a future where love and choice mattered more than fear and control. The morning sky above Nara turned dark as massive ships blotted out the sun. Princess Minji stood on her balcony, watching in horror as the Titan Alliance fleet descended, like a swarm of metal locusts. There were hundreds of them, warships bigger than city blocks, bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. They're 3 weeks early, her military advisor General Wu Jin said, his voice tight with fear. We weren't supposed to have the wedding for another month. Our defenses aren't ready. A thunderous voice boomed across the Crystal City, amplified by speakers on every Titan ship. Princess Minji of Nara, this is Prince Kangmin. I have come to claim my bride. Surrender now and your people will be spared. Resist, and we will take what we want by force. Princess Minji's hands shook as she gripped the crystal railing. Through her palace windows, she could see Titan soldiers already landing in the city streets. They moved like robots, their black armor reflecting no light, their weapons ready to destroy anything that moved. Princess, we have to evacuate you immediately, General Wu Jin urged. Our shield generators can't hold against that many ships. Our weapons are designed for defense, not for fighting an invasion force. But before Princess Minji could respond, Jinho appeared at her side. He had been in the city helping rebuild after the plague, but he had rushed back as soon as the ships appeared. Don't give up yet, he said quietly, studying the enemy fleet with careful eyes. Jinho, look at them, Princess Minji cried. We have 50 defense ships, they have 500 attack vessels. Our weapons can barely scratch their armor. How can we possibly fight that? Jinho was quiet for a moment, his mind working like a computer. On Earth, humans had learned to survive by being smarter, not stronger. General Wu Jin, tell me about Nara's crystal formations, the big ones that grow throughout the planet. The crystal forests? General Wu Jin looked confused. They're just natural formations. Pretty to look at, but useless in a war. Not useless, Jinho said. his eyes lighting up with an idea. "They're perfect." He pulled out a small tablet and began drawing diagrams quickly. "Look, the Titan ships are huge and powerful, but they're also slow and clumsy. They're designed to fight other big ships in open space, not to navigate through tight spaces." Princess Minji watched as Jinho sketched out a plan that seemed impossible. "You want to use the crystal forests as a maze?" "Exactly," Jinho nodded, excitedly. "On Earth we call this guerrilla warfare. When you can't win by being stronger, you win by being smarter. We lead their ships into the crystal formations where they can't maneuver properly. Their size becomes a weakness instead of a strength." General Wu Jin shook his head. "But our ships are too small to damage theirs, even in a maze." "We don't need to destroy them," Jinho explained. "We just need to confuse them and make them crash into each other. Human history is full of small armies defeating big ones by fighting on the right battlefield." Outside, Prince Kangmin's voice boomed again. "You have 1 hour to surrender, Princess. After that, we will begin destroying your cities until you comply." Princess Minji felt panic rising in her chest, but then she looked at Jinho's calm, determined face. This human had already saved her people once. Maybe he could do it again. "Tell me your plan," she said. Jinho spread his drawings on the table. "First, we evacuate all civilians to the deepest crystal caves. Then we use small teams of fast ships to lead the Titan fleet into the crystal forests. The formations are so dense that their big ships will get stuck or collide with each other. But they have ground troops too," General Wu Jin pointed out. "That's where the crystal formations help us most." Jinho smiled. "Those crystals aren't just pretty rocks. They conduct energy, right? What if we could use them to create traps?" Princess Minji began to understand. "The crystals could redirect their own weapon fire back at them." "Exactly. We turn their strength against them. Instead of trying to match their firepower, we make their firepower work for us." As the first Titan ships began entering the atmosphere, Princess Minji made a decision that would change everything. "General Wu Jin, evacuate the civilians immediately. Contact all our pilots and tell them to prepare for the strangest battle plan they've ever heard." She turned to Jinho with new respect in her eyes. "How did humans learn to think like this?" "Because we had to," Jinho said simply. "When you're the smallest kid in a fight, you learn to be the smartest. Today we're going to show the galaxy that sometimes the best way to win a war is to make your enemy defeat themselves." The Crystal City began to hum with activity as Princess Minji's people prepared for a battle unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The crystal forests had become a battlefield unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Massive Titan warships crashed through the glowing formations like angry giants, their weapons firing wildly as they tried to hit the small, fast Naran ships that darted between the crystals like silver fish. Princess Minji piloted her own ship through the chaos, following Jinho's brilliant plan. The human sat beside her, coordinating the battle through his communication device, guiding Naran pilots through the crystal maze with calm, precise instructions. "Tiger Squadron, lead them through the narrow pass near the blue crystals," Jinho spoke into his headset. "When they follow you, the formations will force them into single file. That's when you strike." Below them, Prince Kangmin's flagship, a massive black vessel covered in spikes and weapons, was stuck between two enormous crystal towers. The arrogant prince was screaming orders at his crew, frustrated that his superior technology meant nothing in this strange, beautiful maze. "How is this possible?" Prince Kangmin's voice crackled over the radio. "We have the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. How are these primitives making fools of us?" Princess Minji felt a surge of pride. Jinho's plan was working perfectly. The Titan ships were too big and clumsy to navigate the crystal forests. They kept getting trapped, colliding with each other, or accidentally firing at their own vessels when they tried to shoot at the agile Naran fighters. But then something went wrong. A group of Titan soldiers had found a way to the ground and were setting up a massive cannon aimed directly at the crystal formation where Princess Minji and Jinho were hiding. If they destroyed this particular cluster of crystals, the entire defensive strategy would collapse. "We have to stop them," Princess Minji said, steering her ship toward the ground. "Too dangerous," Jinho replied, but she was already landing behind a grove of smaller crystals. They crept through the glowing forest on foot, moving silently toward the enemy position. Princess Minji had never been in ground combat before, but Jinho moved like he had done this many times. He showed her how to stay low, how to use the crystal formations for cover, how to move without making noise. The Titan soldiers were focused on their weapon, not expecting anyone to attack them from behind. Princess Minji and Jinho were almost close enough to disable the cannon when disaster struck. One of the soldiers turned and saw them. "Intruders!" he shouted, raising his weapon. Everything happened in slow motion. The soldier's gun fired a brilliant red beam directly at Princess Minji. She froze, knowing she couldn't dodge in time. But suddenly Jinho was there, throwing himself between her and the deadly blast. The energy beam hit him in the chest, and he collapsed to the ground with a cry of pain. Princess Minji screamed and caught him as he fell, her heart breaking at the sight of his burned shirt and the agony in his eyes. "Why did you do that?" she cried, pulling him behind a crystal formation as more shots rang out around them. Jinho's face was pale, but he managed to smile. Because that's what you do for people you care about," he whispered, his voice weak but steady. Princess Minji felt tears streaming down her face as she held him. In that moment, with laser fire crackling overhead and her world falling apart around her, she finally understood what she had been feeling for weeks. This wasn't just respect or friendship. This was love. Deep, desperate, real love. "Jinho," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I wish I could marry someone like you, human." He looked up at her with those kind, brave eyes that had first captured her attention. "Someone like me?" "No," she said, her tears falling onto his injured chest. "I wish I could marry you. Not someone like you. You." Around them, the battle continued to rage, but for Princess Minji, everything else had disappeared. She had spent her whole life being told she was valuable because of her royal blood, her political connections, her ability to make alliances through marriage. But this human had shown her what real value looked like. It wasn't about having the biggest weapons or the most advanced technology. It wasn't about conquering others or forcing them to obey. Real courage was about choosing to protect someone, else even when it might cost you everything. Real strength was about standing up for what was right, even when you were outnumbered and outgunned. "So you saved my people during the plague," she continued, her voice shaking. "You saved them again today with your brilliant strategy. And now you've saved me. You keep saving everyone, even though no one ever asks you to." Jinho reached up with his good hand and gently touched her face. "Princess," he said softly, "that's not being a hero, that's just being human." As explosions echoed through the crystal forest and the fate of two worlds hung in the balance, Princess Minji finally understood what it meant to love someone not for what they could give you, but for who they chose to be. The crystal forests echoed with the sounds of victory as the last Titan ship retreated into the darkness of space. Prince Kangmin's mighty fleet, which had seemed unstoppable just hours before, was now limping away in defeat. Half their ships were damaged from crashing into crystal formations, and the other half were too confused and demoralized to continue fighting. Princess Minji sat beside Jinho's hospital bed in the palace medical wing, watching his chest rise and fall as he slept. The doctors said he would recover completely, but the energy blast had left him weak and in pain. She hadn't left his side for 3 days. "Princess," Dr. Sunho said quietly, entering the room with fresh bandages, "the council is waiting for you. They need to discuss the terms of surrender with Prince Kangmin." "Surrender?" Princess Minji looked up in confusion. "But we won. His fleet is running away." "Yes, but he still has hundreds of ships in other systems," Dr. Sunho explained. "For the council believes we should accept his marriage proposal quickly, before he returns with even more forces. They think this victory was just luck." Princess Minji felt anger rising in her chest. After everything that had happened, after Jinho had shown them a completely different way to think about strength and courage, her advisors still wanted to give up and submit to Prince Kangmin's demands. "Tell the council I'll be there soon," she said firmly. When Jinho woke up an hour later, he found Princess Minji staring out the window at the crystal city below. The people were celebrating in the streets, hanging colorful banners and singing traditional songs of victory. Children ran through the squares, playing games and laughing with joy. "How do you feel?" she asked, rushing to his bedside. "Like I got hit by a spaceship," Jinho said with a weak smile. "But alive. How's the city?" "Safe thanks to you," Princess Minji said. "Your strategy worked perfectly. Prince Kangmin's forces are retreating, and our people are celebrating." "That's wonderful," Jinho said, then noticed the worried expression on her face. "But something's wrong," Princess Minji sighed. "The council wants me to still marry Prince Kangmin. They think if we don't agree to his terms, he'll come back with a bigger army and destroy us completely." Jinho was quiet for a moment, thinking. "What do you want to do?" "I want to fight," Princess Minji said, her voice growing stronger. "Not with weapons, but with ideas. You showed me that there's a different way to live, a different way to be strong. I don't want to spend my life being afraid of bullies like Prince Kangmin." She stood up and began pacing around the room, her mind racing with possibilities. What if we created something new? What if instead of surrendering to the Titan Alliance, we built our own alliance? A real one, based on friendship and cooperation. Instead of fear and control. Jinho's eyes lit up despite his pain. "You mean like the alliance between Earth and Nara?" "Exactly," Princess Minji said excitedly. "But bigger. We could invite other peaceful species to join us, show the galaxy that there's an alternative to conquest and domination." "The Council will never agree to that," Jinho warned. "It's too risky, too different from how things have always been done." Princess Minji looked at him with determination in her eyes. "Then I'll have to convince them. You taught me that sometimes the most important battles are fought with words and ideas, not weapons." 2 hours later, Princess Minji stood before the full council in the Great Crystal Chamber. Her advisors sat in their ancient chairs, looking nervous and uncertain. They had expected her to quietly accept the marriage arrangement and return things to normal. "Honored Council," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I have a proposal that will change the future of our world." "Princess, please be reasonable," her chief advisor interrupted. "We must think practically about—" "I renounce my engagement to Prince Kangmin," Princess Minji announced, causing gasps to echo through the chamber. "I will not marry him, and Nara will not submit to the Titan Alliance." The council erupted in worried voices, but Princess Minji continued speaking over them. "Instead, I propose we form a new kind of alliance, a partnership with Earth, built on mutual respect and shared values. Not a marriage of convenience, but a friendship of choice." "But Princess," General Wujin said, "Earth has no advanced technology to offer us. What could we possibly gain from such an alliance?" Princess Minji smiled, thinking of Jinho lying injured in the hospital because he had chosen to protect her. "We would gain something more valuable than technology, General. We would gain allies who fight beside us because they choose to, not because they're forced to. We would gain friends who share their knowledge freely, who help us when we're sick, who teach us new ways to solve old problems." She looked around the room at the faces of her people's leaders. "The human ambassador showed us that real strength doesn't come from having the biggest weapons. It comes from having the biggest heart. I believe it's time for Nara to choose friendship over fear." The vote was close, but Princess Minji's words had planted seeds of hope in her people's minds. As the sun set over the Crystal City, a new chapter in galactic history was about to begin. Its wildest imagination. Princess Minji, now known as Ambassador Minji, walked through the gardens with Jinho at her side. He had recovered completely from his injuries, though a small scar on his chest reminded them both of the day everything changed. They wore matching diplomatic robes, hers made of shimmering Naran crystal fabric, his woven from Earth's finest, silk, symbols of two worlds united in friendship. "The delegation from Zephyr arrives tomorrow," Jinho said, checking his tablet. "They want to join the alliance after hearing about our medical cooperation program." "That's wonderful," Minji smiled. "Dr. Sunho will be so excited. He's been working on combining human and Naran healing techniques for months." As they walked, they passed groups of young people from different worlds studying together. Human children sat beside Naran youth, learning to grow crystal gardens. Corvan artists worked with Earth musicians to create songs that had never been heard before. The sight filled both ambassadors with deep satisfaction. The transformation hadn't been easy. Prince Kangmin had returned twice with larger fleets, threatening to destroy anyone who opposed him. But each time more species had joined the alliance, standing together against his aggression. The Titan alliance was slowly crumbling, as their conquered worlds chose freedom over fear. "Do you ever miss being a princess?" Jinho asked as they sat on their favorite bench where they had shared so many late-night conversations. "Never," Minji replied without hesitation. "I was born to wear a crown and follow rules written by people who died centuries ago, but now I get to help write new rules for the future. I get to choose my own path." "And what path is that?" Jinho asked, with a gentle smile. Minji took his hand in hers, feeling the warmth and strength that had saved her people so many times. "The path that leads wherever we decide to go together." A small commotion near the palace gates caught their attention. A group of children from the local school had gathered around someone, laughing and asking excited questions. When Minji and Jinho approached, they found an elderly Titan soldier sitting on the steps looking tired and lost. "Please, sir," one of the children was saying in broken Titan language, "tell us about your homeworld. We want to learn about everyone." The soldier looked up in surprise when he saw the two ambassadors. I was Prince Kangmin's personal guard," he said nervously, "but I don't want to fight anymore. I heard that people here live differently, that leaders actually care about ordinary citizens." Jinho knelt down to the soldier's level, just as he had with the Naran children during the raider attack so long ago. "What's your name?" "I'm called Tarix," the soldier replied, amazed that these important people were speaking to him with respect. "Well, Tarix," Minji said gently, "would you like to stay for dinner? These children would love to hear stories about your world, and maybe you'd like to hear some of ours." As the sun set over the crystal city, painting the sky in brilliant colors, the gardens filled with the sound of laughter and conversation. Former enemies shared meals and stories. Children who had grown up fearing each other now played games together. Scientists from different worlds worked side by side on projects that would benefit everyone. News reporters from across the galaxy came to document what they called the miracle of Nara. They wanted to understand how two people from such different worlds had created something that was changing the entire political structure of known space. "Ambassador Minji," one reporter asked during an interview, "many people say your love story with Ambassador Jinho proves that romance can conquer anything. What do you think?" Minji looked at Jinho, who was nearby teaching a group of alien children how to play a simple Earth game. "It's not romance that changed everything," she said thoughtfully. "It's the choice to see each other as equals, to help instead of hurt, to build instead of destroy. Love just made it easier to make those choices." Another reporter pressed further. "But surely your personal relationship influenced your political decisions?" "Of course it did," Jinho said, joining the conversation. "When you truly care about someone, you want to create a world where they can be safe and happy. But that's exactly why our alliance works. We all care about each other's people like family." As the stars appeared in the darkening sky, Minji and Jinho stood together on the palace balcony, looking out over a city that had become a symbol of hope for peaceful beings everywhere. Ships from dozens of worlds landed and departed daily, carrying not weapons or threats, but students, teachers, artists and dreamers. "Do you think we really changed the galaxy?" Minji asked. Jinho put his arm around her shoulders. "We proved that one person's choice to be kind can start a revolution. Everything else just followed naturally. In the years that followed, their story would be told on 1,000 worlds. But the real legacy wasn't the romance between a human and an alien princess. It was the simple, radical idea that strength comes not from the power to conquer others, but from the courage to lift them."